Hello, everyone. It's Lionel
Good.
Sandner from Pembroke Publishers. Just before we get started, I would like you to know that Pembroke Publishers' head office is situated upon the traditional territories of the Wendat, the Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Mississaugas of Scugog, Hiawatha First Nation, Alderville First Nation, and the Métis Nation. The treaty covering this area of land in Toronto, Ontario, is collectively known as the Williams Treaties of 1923. I would also like to acknowledge and thank the Wasanic people on whose traditional territories I live, work, and learn. The Wasanic people have lived and worked on this land since time immemorial. And I wish to recognize the significant contributions of Indigenous peoples across this land. We seek a new relationship with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, one based in honor and deep respect. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Larry Swartz. I see from the chat, many of you have heard Larry speak before, or like Shelley is a past student of his from OISE, where he has been a literacy and drama instructor for the past 40 years. Not only at OISE, but he has been a classroom teacher, a consultant, and a workshop presenter as well. He has worked with teachers across North America and spread his passion for reading, whether it's children's books or today his new book, Right to Read, with teachers from all over, including groups of teachers in China, New Zealand, and what I always think is the coolest one, Queen Noor's Literacy Initiative in Jordan. Larry's committed to helping teachers use quality children's literature across the curriculum to inspire students to read. And I suspect that's why many of us are here. And there's also a couple comments, Larry, in the chat about nuggets of wisdom. So I will pass the virtual mic over and let you take us forward.
I was talking about my own past and trying to remember school days of what I was asked to write and invited to write. I have very few memories of elementary school. It was usually we all wrote the same thing assigned by the teacher. I remember my grade 7 projects. In grade 7, I wrote about blood. In grade 8, I wrote about TV. And I wrote about color blindness in grade 9. And those are my memories when I was revisiting this book and revisiting the writing in my life in schools. So I don't know what your memories of writing were in your school days, which is my first question. And my second one was what I did as a teacher. So when I began teaching, I know that I was doing Halloween stories. I did Remembrance Day poems, and I looked for ideas in books, and that sort of informed my reading and writing at the beginning of my career, 25 years in the classroom. Then I took courses. And I didn't know that my friend Ron Benson would be on screen tonight, but I took my reading specialist course. Joe Phoenix absolutely shaped my thinking. Ron Benson was one of my instructors and my reading specialist. And of course, my mentor, David Booth, who gave me food for thought about writing. Another thing that happened to me was my thesis. I worked on the reading-writing connection. I was really intrigued with kids were thinking and how can they share their thinking as they were reading or as they reflected on their reading. So my thesis is about reading response journals that moved into the talk curriculum. So that is the reading-writing connection. And that was what I was chatting about at the beginning. And I did talk about my role. I teach at OISE now in the teacher education program. And we got 12 weeks to teach language arts. And you got to teach reading and writing and spelling and media and language across the curriculum or integrated literacy. And where does writing fit in that? I get a class, maybe 3 hours, maybe if I stretch it to do a class and a half for writing. My students, big question. I said, what's the one question or a couple of questions you have about writing? Motivation, motivation, motivation. How do you inspire kids to write? And that was the impetus for this book. So I took my thinking and my some of you and most of you who know that I'm passionate about children's literature, and I wanted to look at the reading-writing connection, and that's how this book came to be, thinking how we can motivate the students. And I want to give you an overview of that and some practical little nuggets that you can take into your work. The book title there is Right to Read. It says 60 easy ways to help students discover and investigate the reading-writing connection. And of course, that cover came out, was developed months before the draft went in, and it turns out that I have 69 lessons. Now, there's 26 letters in the alphabet, but you'll see how, of course, some letters get multiple entries because it is organized under an ABC framework, which is why the title predominates with that circle. But there's about, I just counted them before, and I think I'm up to 69 lessons. It went from 72 to 65. I think we're, if anybody wants to count, but it's certainly over 60 lessons to inspire students to read. Next. So I have quotes spread throughout. I kind of like these to start my little chat with you. Read something, then write something. Read something else, then write something else. And that came from a poet, Marvin Bell, and that sort of was a great influence, planted a great seed for my book, because I do believe that reading inspires writing. And I have another quote later on that really, pushes this further. So there's one quotation, and the next quotation I chose was from the brilliant author, Jason Reynolds. Writing is like any sort of sport. In order for you to get better at it, you have to exercise the muscle. So this book is about exercising the muscle and finding ways to exercise the muscle. I have quotes spread throughout, and there's actually an activity where students look at writing quotations, but those two will set us on our path for our little chat tonight. Next. So read to write. I'm going to start with talking about, now it's called mentor texts, choosing books that are going to inspire their writing, or anchor texts. But the read to write component is we borrow ideas and structure so that, and the vocabulary for their writing. When we share books, whether it's the read aloud or they read on their own, we're borrowing from authors, and that's not a bad thing. Borrowing's not the same as stealing. Jean Little would be very angry with me for saying that we steal from authors, but I think we borrow ideas and look at the structures, because those become our mentor texts and anchor texts. And then we learn about the craft of writing. So the word choice, the style, the description. We look at all the crafts, and of course, Ralph Fletcher's books on craft lessons presents that beautifully. But we want to look at the components of writing. The text features. So when, how do we use headings? How do we use diagrams, etc., lists and speech balloons? What kids learn about them through their reading, and then they apply it in their writing. And how to describe characters and places, emphasize what is significant about plot in their writing. So they use them as reading serves as models, and how to present factual information if we're looking at particularly nonfiction texts. There's a handful of reasons of why we want to make the reading to writing connection. The next slide is all writing. Lionel, I chose this as a slide. It's somewhere in my text there. All writing is meant to be read, if only by the writer. It's really tricky. Who are the kids writing for? Do the kids know why they are writing a list about autumn leaves or a poem about Remembrance Day? And who is writing it? So traditionally, this goes back to my school days. When I began teaching, the kids would finish the writing, handed it in the basket. Mr. Swartz will take it home and mark it in his bedroom. Well, I got better things to do in my bedroom than mark kids' writing. So assessment, we're not going to get into that heavily today, but I think we've got to think about all kinds of audiences for the kids. And one of the audiences is themselves. I just marked this in one of the pages. Sometimes it's the self, in particular, diary writing and reading responses. They write to their friends, emails and questions, their classmates that they share with them, their parents as newsletters and published works, certainly the teachers in presenting a report or response journals as well, and sometimes known and unknown audiences. So think about who the kids are writing for, and do they know? If it's only for the teacher, then I think we have to rethink our programs, because I think they have to have all kinds of audiences, because writing needs to be read, of course, and that's the right to read component of the book. So that's why I made this a separate slide about audience. If any questions ever come to mind, or Anything you disagree with or agree with, put it in the chat room because I really am interested. As I say, this is just me working on a slide here to talk about the audience. In the introduction, I had a chance to think about writing. The next slide, Lionel. And I came with 10 essentials. And this is a few pages in the book. But I'm just going to give you a quick overview. I think that choice matters. Even if you are asking them to write a recount, they should have a choice in the events in their lives. They should have sometimes a choice in the content and also the style. But sometimes the genre that I teach, if we want to teach free verse poetry, that might not be a choice for them, but they can choose the topics within. So I think choice is really important. You want choice in your writing. I do too. Mentor text matters, something I chatted with already, and my friend Adrienne Gare is brilliant at this. She calls them anchor texts, and in her brilliant books about powerful writing, she does use a mentor text, and whatever word we choose, I think it's important to turn to literature, and I gave you some reasons why already, I believe. Now, talk matters. Now, when we have writing, let's say we timetable writing from 9:30 to 10:10, they're going out for recess. And let's say it's a 40-minute period. If you do structure it that way in your program, there's many ways to structure the writing time. But in that 40 minutes, how much time are the kids actually writing? You know that they chat and they organize and they get their pencils and change their paper. Well, I'm of the belief that talk really matters in the writing, and talk should precede the writing. If I asked them to write a story about a time they had stitches, or the time they went on a trip to the cottage, or a trip overseas, or something that happened to them in a game they played yesterday, I think they should talk before they write, because that sort of percolates their idea and it's a rehearsal for their writing. So let's find a place for talk in the writing, and of course talking after the writing, because feedback matters as well. And that's a whole other workshop as well. My colleague Shelley Stagg Peterson is the guru at giving feedback. But how do we talk to kids about writing, and how do we teach the students in the class to give feedback to each other? Writing with others matters. I've talked about interaction, but I also believe in collaboration. So opportunities where they work with others, whether it's a partner, a small group, or brainstorming a chart. With others matters. The revising and editing, looking at the transcription skills is really important, and really a really hard one to teach. And I think we have to teach that through mini lessons as well. I did talk about audience, success criteria, give the kids specific success criteria to let them know what you're looking for in the writing. That is spread throughout the book, where I have writing tips in each lesson. And process matters. It is a process. And some things they move to what's called publication. I remember one time I worked with a brilliant educator, my friend Brian Crawford, who passed away several years ago, and I had the privilege of team teaching with him. And one time I said, hand in your good copies, and he pulled me, he said, Larry, they're all good copies, but it is a process. So moving from process to publication, and of course writing, when you do have that 40-minute timetable within your literacy program, of course they write in other areas of the curriculum. My friend Kathy Marks, brilliant about writing in the math curriculum as well. And of course they are writing in social studies and science. So writing isn't just your literacy and your writing block. Those are some essentials that raise lots of questions. We could unpack those further. I'd like to show this chart next, Lionel. I'm going to give you an overview. So I organized the book under ABCs. I hope you can see this chart. It does appear in the table of contents in some capacity with page numbers, but I decided my framework, and this was borrowed from my mentor, David Booth, wrote a book called The ABCs of Creative Writing. And so he planted a seed for this book as well. But let's look at the alphabet here and just take a moment to see what Larry came up with. Here's what you might start with. Look at your initials. So I'm L, and if I look at L, letters enroll, letters to persuade, lists, and list poems. There's 5 different L's there. Start with your 2 initials and see what I have there. We're just going to spend a moment to look at this list. And as you look at this list for another 60 seconds, which ones do you feel comfortable with? I would have you put a check mark if I handed you this in paper. Which ones do you feel comfortable with? Which ones surprise you? And you say, oh, I didn't think of that. And of course, something like yarns and urban tales mystifies people. But a yarn is just a made-up tale, and an urban tale is a story that's been passed on that may or not be true. Now, of course, with an alphabet, X, Y, and Z is always tricky. But I came up with something that I hope worked. So, which ones are surprises? Which ones do you feel comfortable with? And which ones do you want to learn more about? Well, I'm going to touch base on a couple of them and give you some practical ideas. So that's the overview of the 70 or so, 69 lessons or so. And the next slide, Lionel, one way I made a chart for this, I don't want to give you the whole chart, but I tried to organize them for different functions of writing. So if we mixed up that ABC list, we write to explain, to inform, to narrate, to give opinions, to patterns, personal writing, writing poems, and writing to respond to reading. So that's the framework that I came up with, and there's about 8 in each. The chart just is another way of organizing this, and that's in the teacher material of the book. And just to give you an example of one, the next slide. So in writing to respond to reading, I have book blurbs, character journals, epilogues, 4 rectangle response, letters and role, quotations, reading response journals, thinking stems, and writing and roll. So that's how I was able to reorganize that. And again, I'd love to do a whole workshop. I'm just responding to reading, but it's a very important part of having the students reflect on their writing. And one way to demonstrate their thinking is through writing. Just very briefly, the next slide. So this just gives you an overview. Each lesson includes a description of the writing mode. And then I read to write component. So sometimes I mention a text, sometimes I give you a text, and that's to set the context. So they have an example, they have a model, and it should be an inspiration for students to write. So on each page, there's a read to write component. And then the practical part is the write to read strategy, step-by-step instructions for the students to follow so that they can practice that particular skill or lesson. And then a let's go further component to practice and stretch their thinking about the lesson that they've done. Now, I did have a challenge. I'm being honest with you. We're friends. We just met a few minutes ago, but my challenge was to make this in 1 page. So my publisher was adamant that, because I can talk a lot and I write a lot too when I'm giving instructions, but each one was reduced, and my brilliant, and I thank her so much, Kat gave me some brilliant editing with this, and we got it to 1 page. And the other bonus, I don't know why I didn't put this on I did. Each lesson is directed to the students. So to be honest, just to let you in on a secret, this book was written for teachers. During the pandemic, it was a project that I worked on, and then I shook it up, and the voice is right to the students now. So each lesson is directed to the students. The next one will give you an example. I know it's text heavy, but there's the book blurb. I give you an explanation, how to read to write, how inviting kids to investigate book blurbs. Then I give them write to read, how to write a book blurb, and let's go further as an activity, the 200-word book blurb. And then the writing tip is on the side. So that gives you the framework of how I fit into 1 page. And again, it's a model, the schema that carries them through for the students to write independently. And perhaps you want the whole class to look at a book blurbs in their response to reading. So it could be an individual, it could be small groups, or it could be whole class. So that is the framework of the book. You're not going to not get a workshop or webinar with Larry without looking at literature. So here are some books that I chose that are mentioned throughout the book. oh, I'd love to sit down and just read these books to you, but all I'm giving you is the covers. So many of you know the best part of me. You don't need a lesson plan. You don't need a guide from Larry, because the book gives you that. Many teachers have used this book. And in this book, an author and photographer invited kids to talk about the best part of me. Is it your eyes? Is it your lips? Is it your knees? And in the inside, I like my hair. It's long, black, and wavy. If you look real close, you can see red streaks. It comes from my Mexican heritage. It's wavy like the ocean. I love that one because she uses metaphor. She personalizes it in description in 3 or 4 sentences. And I have a book that a teacher gave me where his grade 5 class each did a lesson modeled on the best part of me. So sometimes it's obvious. And I certainly invite my students to look at literature through that lens when they're choosing to share books with at any grade level. The next book, again, needs no introduction. And of course, this has been used wisely from teachers. The Day the Crayons Quit. This is the best book I know to teach voice because each of the crayons has voice. It's the best book to teach letter writing. And I couldn't imagine doing a persuasive letter writing unit without doing The Day the Crayons Quit by Drew Daywalt. A student teacher did a brilliant job for her grade 4 practicum, and she had the kids look at different objects in the classroom, and they put together a publication called The Day the Classroom Quit. And here's the first one, grade 4 student. Computer here. I'd like to propose that maybe once in a while we could use a memory stick because my brain is overloading of information. Woo, sorry, I got a bit carried away. You know that this kid has met Drew Daywalt. And I'd love to read this. Sorry I didn't make slides of it. It just was a little bit complicated. But that lesson, a great, great mentor text. And if you haven't read it, look at it in different capacities for looking at writing. The next one is another obvious one. I think originally Adrian Gear, when I started her Reading for the Love of It, this is one of the best books that teachers use for persuasive writing. I wanna iguana. So the kid tries to convince his mom that he needs an iguana as a pet. Oh, here's page 1. I know you think I should, dear mom, I know you don't think I should have Mike's baby iguana when he moves, but here's why I should. If I don't take it, it goes to Stinky, and Stinky's going to eat it. You don't want that to happen. And then the mother writes back. A brilliant book giving reasons, persuasive reasons, and certainly invites kids, absolutely invites kids to persuade their parents to do letter writing about a pet that they want to own. So there's another gem. And then another one by this author is I Want a New Room. Let's do the next one. If you need one book in your life, I tell my student teachers, because they just went out on their practicum, and I said, I couldn't imagine going into a practicum without a book in your hand. I said, you know what? Go in with 2 picture books. Well, my students all have a book in their hand for 2 reasons. One, it was an assignment that they had to do, preparing a teacher guide, and I gave them a gift. Every student in my class got a gift of a picture book. I don't know why I said that, but I was cleaning out my office, and I gave everyone a picture book. I said, I couldn't imagine if you're a supply teacher not going into classroom without a picture book. Well, this one is a gem at any grade level. Welcome to Earth by Sophie Blackall. And here's the little gift for you. The next slide will show you. Lionel, here's the writing lesson. Dear visitor from outer space, if you come to Earth, here's what you need to know about ... So there is your motivation. There's your story starter. There's your letter writing. And kids can write letter. You can do this 2 ways. One is you can assign a topic. If you come to Earth, here's what you need to know about the pandemic. Here's what you need to know about online teaching. You might get some interesting views from kids. Or you might have them write about an animal. Here's what you need to know about dogs, about zebras, about cats, about orangutans. Or they can choose their topic. Here's what you need to know about families, about friends, about bullies, about teachers. Here's what you need to about writing. So I've had great success with my adults on this. I'm going on a little project in the new year, going into classrooms to get some kid samples. My niece, who teaches grade 4, had great success with this one because the kids could write on their own topic. So if you need a lesson for tomorrow, you've just got those first opening words from Sophie Blackall's book. If you come to Earth, here's what you need to know about. I wonder what you would write about. And if this was an interactive workshop, you'd be writing right now for Larry. Next. Beautiful new book. I love this book. I think it's one of the top 10 books of the year. The Blue Scarf is a girl from another country, unidentified country, and she loses a blue scarf. Well, Larry looks at the title here and would ask the kids, what is a special article of clothing in your life? In this case, it's about a blue scarf that she loses, and she lives in a land of blue, and the blue scarf goes into the land of yellow, the land of green, the land of red, and it's an immigration or refugee story because she has to find her home and feel safe in her home. So the book works on that level. I'm certainly not doing justice to it, but it's a book that would give me some inspiration, not only for talking about describe an important piece of clothing, but describe a time that you had to move. Many students, and it doesn't have to be an immigration refugee story, have stories about moving. And I think that's an inspiration that this book offers. Another book that I came across recently, next. The Doll. Oh, I love this book. This is from Second Story Press. And if anybody wants the teacher guide, I did the teacher guide. I was honored to do the teacher guide. But listen, this is so looking at the opening page there, or the cover page, this is a refugee story, autobiographical, about a young girl who came to Canada and she was given a doll when she landed. And it's she comes full circle. Now as an adult, she passes the doll on to a girl who is a refugee entering Canada. That's the story in a nutshell. But listen to the opening sentence. Long ago in a nearby land, there was a young girl whose eyes were deep ocean blue, whose dimples twinkled like bright, mysterious stars. She was waiting. To and fro, her skinny legs dangled from a plastic chair as planes landed and lifted above cotton candy clouds. In her hand, she held a small doll with wild curls of cinnamon, lips sweet and rosy. 20 words or so, 30 words, deep ocean blue, dimples that twinkled, wild curls of cinnamon. When kids hear that, read that, it becomes models for their writing. And the author gives them some vocabulary and ways of making images. I always like the one, I joked about this with my students. You know, when you give back a piece of writing, you say, add more details. What the heck does add more details mean to an 8-year-old? And I think we got to be specific. And I think I was always, I mean, sharing my guilt with you. I was the teacher who would say, write a descriptive paragraph about an apple and add details. And I think and that's where I'm guilty. And I learned over the years, we have to model, we have to be explicit. The word workshops came up with the work of Reggie Routman and Lucy Calkins and Shelley Harwin. Give workshops to teach them what we want to do. I would just give them the ideas. And I know I'm guilty when I was teaching those kids, but I know now that it's important to model and be explicit about the teaching, and workshops allow us to do that. So I could do lots of workshop writing on similes with this book or adjectives with the doll. And one more that came my way recently. This is from Pajama Press, Outside You Notice. And this is paying attention. I have one of my lessons is on observations. And this book is about paying attention to the world outside. And certainly when we were stuck inside, there were many books in the last couple of years written about the pandemic and being stuck inside. Outside, you notice a dandelion is just as golden as a marigold. Outside, you notice that seeds cupped in your hand feel like the tiniest important things in the world. And I know I can't do justice with the pages, but each one gives you factual information. So I should have made a slide of that. I apologize. So there's a handful of books, and you are welcome to get those if you once the webinar is made available to you. Next, additional features of Right to Read. I do give teaching text for each lesson. There is a teacher component at the back of the book where we give suggested teaching tips. And then for each lesson, I give students writing tips. I have assessment checklists at the back, both for the self-assessment and for the students. There are some reproducible masters that you can give to the whole class to inspire them. Professional recommendations, I always have some book lists. And of course, I love, my favorite thing is Larry's book list. And so I have about 3 or 4 pages of Dr. Larry recommends with some recommended literature for these lessons. Let me finish off with, if you didn't get a nugget yet, here are some nuggets that I'm going to leave you with. I think I put this in every book. And you're going to say, oh, no, not again. You're putting this in your book. But I've done variations in the book. So if you, I'm just looking at my, looking at it up close here. This is called a tic-tac-toe chart. I'm going to be doing this online with my students in my course next week. My course is called Play, Language, and Learning. And we're going to finish off with this activity because we are going to play by dramatizing it. But here's a great writing activity. I have it as a reproducible, and the activity is choose any 3 if you are playing tic-tac-toe. An empty well, a dark forest, a lost animal, a magic mirror, a jeweled crown, a heavy suitcase, a torn map, a rusty key, an ancient book. If you were playing tic-tac-toe, are you going to choose a diagonal, an empty well, a jeweled crown, an ancient book? Or are you going to choose a lost animal, a jeweled crown, or a torn map? Working horizontally or vertically, you might do a torn map, a rusty key, an ancient book. So the students choose 3, and that is to motivate them into story writing or inventing a yarn tale. And this one is absolutely, they need to talk before they write. What is the story that you think is going to happen? And Mr. Swartz is not satisfied with a 1-sentence story. I came upon an empty whale in a dark forest, and a lost animal was crying at the bottom. I want to know how long the whale's been there. Whale has been there. I want to know what the well is made of. I want to know how it became empty. Does anybody know about this whale? The dark forest, is it a scary forest? Is it a mystery forest? Is it a magical forest? What will I find in the forest? And what animal will I find? What's the connection in the forest to the well? Is this animal, did somebody lose the animal? Is he lost from his mother? So raising those questions just moves their story invention a little bit further. But this is a great example of motivating, I think. This one has never failed me. And then they talk, and then they write. And then, of course, in my drama class, they dramatize the story. 2 more slides then. I have a list here. I have a chart. There's actually 26 times 3, whatever 26. I have a list of nouns, a list of verbs, and a list of adjectives. And I believe that every word is a story. So I invite the students to choose any word from the alphabet list that inspires you to do a quick write. Quick write is another, I should have made a handout on that one because I love quick writes. But choose any word from this list: adventure, bully, camp, disaster. Do you have a story about fire? Do you have a story about gardens, a hospital, a keepsake, laughter, favorite movie, a neighbor, a phobia, a scar, a vacation? Choose any words: yesterday or zoo, and every word inspires a story. Again, giving them the words, and they have nouns, verbs, and adjectives. So I like this chart that I had fun doing it. A little bit tricky X, Y, Z, but I came up with one for each one. And then I have a page of 36 thought starters. So this is for my students who ask for motivation, motivation, motivation. And we reduce this to one page, 36 ideas, and it's 3 different sections. Tell, questions and complete this statement. So if kids can't think of writing, they can have this chart for their notebooks or for a rainy day kind of writing. I hate using that term. How about this one? Tell everything you need to know about your friend, your brother, your babysitter. How about yourself? How about a story about traveling to the past or about the future? Tell me that story. Tell me what you would say to a bully in a letter. So those are 3 of 12 ideas. How about these questions? What would you like to invent? Which superpower would you like to have? How would you describe yourself to someone you didn't know? Questions to consider. Choose one, and let's use that for writing. And of course, sentence stems. If I were an animal, ... When I look out my window, I see ... And my favorite one, of course, for curiosity is I wonder. So those happen to be in the reproducibles, but they connect to the lessons inside. I'm going to finish off then with 2 quotes. Listen to this, Stephen King. This one's a whack in the side of the head. If you don't have time to read, you don't have the time or the tools to write. Simple as that. And Stephen King's not going to steer us wrong. But I really like to put this one in my overhead today, my PowerPoint, because it is about reading. And I do believe strongly. That doesn't mean that if they're readers, they're going to be a good writer. I understand that. But I just think that writers, and I'm not going to go back to my first slide, can inspire, motivate, and teach the students the craft of writing. I put this in my last 3 PowerPoints. If you met me, I think it introduces my book. From Malala Yousafzai, let us remember one book, one pen, one child, and one teacher can change the world. One book, one pen, one child, one teacher can change the world. Now, of course, kids are writing more than they ever did when you went to school. It's called the computer. They are writing emails. They are writing authentic writing when they send messages or ask questions or text messages. So let's celebrate that. Let's honor that. So when we talk about one pen, we could put one screen as well. And we being aware of the kinds of writing that kids are doing as well. And just to finish off my 2 slides, Lionel, those are my 3 most recent books, Deepening in Class and Online Learning. I wrote with my colleague, Debbie Nyman, and a teacher candidate, Magdalene Livison. And this is for the online learning and it's active learning strategies. Teaching Tough Topics is my belief that children's literature helps kids build a deeper understanding of social justice, diversity, and equity. And Better Reading Now is teaching strategies for reading. So there's some of my 3 recent books. And today we are finishing off with Right to Read, Larry's book. And the last slide, there's my email. I do have a website, Dr. Larry Recommends. You know that once a month I publish recommended books. I thank my friend in Italy did that photograph of me, very creative and artistic. If you have any questions, I'm at the University of Toronto, larry.swartz@utoronto.ca. Thank you for listening. I feel like I've been blabbing on for a long time. We got off to a rocky start. And I'm not sure what's in the chat room, but any questions or queries, we have a few minutes to address those. Thank you for listening. Lionel, over to you.
That was great. And yes, it was a little bit of a rocky start, but you finished strong, especially with that picture. When I first saw that, I thought that's a great picture. So now I know the story behind it. But yeah. The chat, I think, is fairly quiet. There's some thank yous starting to come in. There was a couple comments, though. Cheryl talked about when you borrow and citing how it's important to give credit, as you mentioned earlier on. And Fatma had mentioned that she liked the idea of sharing that first page where you had pick your letters, which you and I have the same letters, yeah. Which activities we would do. So I think, and I saw it all the way through, that choice, like, it seems like you're trying to give the teacher the tools to give the kids so many options just to engage them. And that must be part of what you were thinking when you put the book together.
All right. Again, I'm confessing it because Jean Little, God bless her, great writer. We were at a writers festival for kids and I was talking about ways to motivate them to write. And I said, you should borrow ideas from authors. Well, she attacked me, not publicly. She says, how you're telling kids to steal our ideas? ideas. And I wasn't telling kids to steal their
Oh,
ideas.
yeah.
But how many teachers have done a pattern book? One of my lessons is patterns, where we borrow, would you rather? We borrow the structure, or we borrow brown bear, brown bear. How many teachers have done? We just have to look at Mary Bigler for her brilliant Funny Bunny book about brown bear. That's what I meant by borrowing, looking
Yeah.
at the structuring, look at the, and Jean Little thought I was telling them to steal their ideas.
Yeah.
I think
No.
borrowing is a fair thing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So good. Good. Aurelia, I hope I said that right, is asking, in your opinion, Larry, do opportunities to share ideas orally replace that graphic organizer planning?
If you want my answer, that I give my students, balance, balance, balance.
Yeah.
David taught me all of the above summertime. I think you need both. I think the graphic organizers are really important, and I think graphic organizers inspire talk. And in the right, so there's the reading writing connection as well. So I think nothing to replace, but finding a place when it's most meaningful to stretch their thinking, their brainstorming, and to motivate them and inspire them. So that's a great point about graphic or my friend. And that's a great collaborative activity. I think graphic organizers should only be done with a partner in small groups.
Yeah,
and whoever's in control of the pen or sharing the pen. There's an example. Thanks for that question.
Yeah, it's good. And again, you're back to motivating, because you're with the balance, you're doing different things. So the choice is there, I guess. Good. Just thank yous from others as well. Maybe just while we're waiting, and there may be another question or two coming in, folks, we do have a couple opportunities here. As Larry mentioned, he has been very busy with his, as we all know he is. There are on our webinar site different webinars with Larry talking about each of these books. So if that is something of interest for you, please feel free to register for those. We'd love for you to watch them. They're all posted up there, and they're meant to be there to support your professional development. We also have a couple things just to finish off with, because you might be interested in purchasing one of his books. We're going to have just a quick lucky draw and draw one name for someone to receive the ebook version of Larry's Right to Read, and then I'll post an offer as well for $5 off on your next purchase with Pembroke. So the way we do this, if this is the first time you've been here, is we have a little app that we put here, and we're just going to draw from the audience, and I'm going to spin it, and we're going to get a name pop up, and tomorrow we will contact you. So Shelley, congratulations. You are our winner of today's book. And I believe it's Allison that will be contacting you tomorrow by email to get the details from you to get you Larry's book. And also for those of you that would like to see the book, I'm just going to release on your screen, probably down in the left-hand corner, there is a little pop-up. And if you would like $5 off your next purchase, all you need to do when you've picked your book or books is to go into the I guess the final page, and there's a place to put in the code WTR22. And that will take $5 off your total. So please take advantage of that particular code, and we'd love for you to be able to get the $5 off. Plus, until I believe it's the end of March, the government of Canada is in collaboration with Pembroke Publishers to all shipping is free. So if you're thinking of maybe Christmas gifts or holiday gifts or birthday gifts or upcoming spring break or any other holiday, this might be the opportunity to get one of these books. So Larry, I think that pretty well covers everything off. There's a couple thank yous there. Maybe I'll let you take us out with final words.
My words are thank you. And I think Stephen King said it best. Read something, or no, Marvin Bell, read something and write something. Read something else and write. How's that for parting words? Thank you so much.
Thanks, Larry.
Love chatting. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Lionel. You're a gem, Lionel. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. Take care, everyone. Have a good evening.